We're big fans of Pentax's recent consumer SLRs. They've lacked the latest features such as articulated touch screens and Wi-Fi, but instead Pentax has gone for large optical viewfinders, elegant controls, weather-sealed bodies, and fast performance. They're priced to compete with the likes of the Nikon D5500 and Canon EOS 750D, but their features are more in line with upmarket cameras such as the Nikon D7200 and Canon 70D. The K-S2 is the latest generation of the series, and Pentax is finally catching up with some modern trends. HDMI makes a long-awaited appearance, as does Wi-Fi. The 3in screen isn't touch-sensitive but it is articulated. A selfie mode kicks in when the screen is folded out to face forwards, whereupon photos are taken using the Wi-Fi button rather than the normal shutter button, giving a more comfortable grip of the camera. All the things we've admired about previous Pentax SLRs are here too. The viewfinder is significantly bigger than on other SLRs at this price, equivalent to 0.63x on a full-frame camera and with 100% coverage. We can't stress enough what a difference this makes to the experience of taking photos. There are dual command dials for direct access to aperture and shutter speed. The other controls are superbly designed to put key functions within easy reach. For example, the ISO button not only lets you set the ISO speed manually but also the range of speeds available in auto ISO mode. Optical stabilisation is built into the sensor so it works with any lens including wide-aperture primes. The camera is weather-sealed and so can be used in rain, mist, or situations that are prone to splashes. The same goes for the new kit lens. This lens is much slimmer than its predecessor, retracting to 41 mm when not in use. The lens cap adds a further 7 mm, but it's still a remarkably petite SLR at 116 mm from lens cap to viewfinder. The lens must be rotated to extend it before use, and we found that this action was a little stiff, but it's a minor complaint. The zoom range is a little shorter than normal at 18 to 50 mm, 27 to 75 mm in 35 mm equivalent focal lengths, but we can live with that. Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi comes with NFC for automatic configuration with compatible devices. After installing the app on an Android phone, it's also available for iOS devices. We were connected in about 5 seconds, although sometimes it took much longer. The app can browse photos stored on the camera and take pictures remotely. The latter includes touch autofocus and a full complement of exposure controls, with the camera automatically entering shutter or aperture priority mode when either of those settings is adjusted. Transferring photos proved trickier. We eventually figured out the convoluted sequence of button pushes, but while we could send snaps directly to Facebook, the option to save photos to the device was grayed out. This app reminds us of the early efforts by other manufacturers, with a few kinks still to ironed out. Aliasing and HDR. The 20-megapixel sensor doesn't include an anti-alias AA, filter, which in theory boosts sharpness but increases the risk of facts such as more interference. It's quite common these days, but we've always found both the benefit and drawback hard to spot. The K-S2 is able to simulate the effect of an AA filter with a small shake of its on-sensor optical stabilization. There's even a bracket mode that captures 3 shots with different AA simulation settings. It's an interesting idea, but even in direct comparisons the difference was extremely subtle. We could just about see it in hair textures in our studio scene when we went looking for it, but otherwise it was lost on us. Another function that left us underwhelmed is the HDR mode. Short for high dynamic range, this mode captures a couple of frames at different exposure settings and combines them into a single JPEG with a greater range of highlight and shadow detail than would otherwise be possible. It's pretty much standard on digital cameras these days, but the K-S2's implementation produced results that looked gaudy and overprocessed. For creative color processing, nothing beats shooting in RAW mode and processing on a computer. Pentax makes RAW capture easy with an FX button that's assigned by default to switch to RAW mode for the next photo only. It's also possible to resave the most recent exposure as a RAW file. This is ideal for people who prefer the convenience of JPEG's smaller file sizes and wider compatibility, but might want to use RAW for the occasional shot with particular artistic merit. One feature where the K-S2 is lagging behind its rivals is autofocus. There are 11 autofocus points arranged in a 3x3 grid of cross-type points, plus an additional pair to the left and right. It's not bad, but it's not as flexible as the Nikon D5500's 39 points or the Canon 750D's 19. Then again, the Canon EOS 700D only has 9, and that didn't stop us giving it a Best Buy award. Continuous performance has slipped a little, with the 16-megapixel Pentax K50 delivering 6 fps but the 20-megapixel K-S2 only managing 5 fps. This slowed further to 4.5 fps when continuous autofocus was enabled. It kept going for 30 JPEGs or 10 RAW frames before slowing, which puts it slightly ahead of the D5500. Video mode is the K-S2's weakest area. Details look distinctly soft compared to the Nikon D5500's output, and a pronounced rolling shutter effect produced skewed geometry in fast-moving scenes. Autofocus is fixed for the duration of clips. Manual exposure control is available, but the ISO speed is limited to 3200, and clips at that setting were quite noisy. It's fine for the occasional casual clip, but keen videographers should look elsewhere. It's surprising, then, that Pentax has included a microphone socket. We don't envisage it'll see much use. Our photo tests gave much less cause for concern, but we had some minor reservations here too. The kit lens performed well, but handling of dense textures in JPEGs was good rather than great. Noise levels were a little higher than from the D5500 at fast ISO speeds, with some grain and false color at ISO 6400. We also noticed a tendency to overexpose highlights in high-contrast scenes, possibly due to the relatively coarse 77-segment metering sensor. The D5500 has a 2,016-pixel metering sensor, making it easier for the camera to identify small areas of highlight in a scene. We expect superb image quality from any camera that costs over £500, and so our small concerns and the basic video mode keep the K-S2 from top marks. We're being pretty fussy, though. By any normal measure, the K-S2 does deliver superb image quality, and it's only by direct comparison with its rivals that we can spot a few places where it could do even better.